It's 5 o'clock in Pirate Country, and it's time to get pumped up with the P-Man. Hit the door and hit the road. 94.3 The Game is going to get you home, and the P-Man's not holding back.
Yes! Yes! Pirates win! Pirates win!
Bring on the Patrick Johnson Show on 94.3 The Game.
Holy mackerel! Oh, my goodness!
The flagship station of the ECU Pirates.
All right. Hello again, everybody. Welcome in. Patrick Johnson here with you. It is the Patrick Johnson Show on this Tuesday, and it is the 30th of July. 94.3 The Game, 94.3thegame.com, and the IBX Media app. We have a sensational show on tap for you today. It's not every day that you get a chance to talk with the guy that knows everything about Pirate athletics and Pirate football. Here he is, making a triumphant return to 94.3 The Game before his radio show returns, the one and only Stephen Igo from Hoist the Colors, 247 Sports, joining us here today. Buddy.
It's been too long since I've been on these airwaves, Patrick. So appreciate you having me back. I think this is my first appearance on any 94.3 programming or any Interbanks Media programming since the summer hiatus started. It's been a lengthy summer hiatus, but a much-needed one. Looking forward to getting back to the grind here shortly with ECU football practice starting. But glad to be on the Patrick Johnson Show, man. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome of you to come on. I think it was around this time last year, or maybe, it was probably a little sooner. Anyway, we talked to you. It's great. Hoist the Colors returns at noontime on Monday, August 12th. So stand by for that. As Igo will be back for his multiple-month run as the preeminent voice of covering the Pirates in eastern North Carolina and in Greenville, as Igo will be bringing it back, Hoist the Colors. Of course, Hoist the Colors online, and Steven's been writing this entire time. He has a lot of great coverage and articles every day on Pirate football and also following the recruiting beat. To me, Steven, that's the thing that probably in your business, not that you still don't have a need or a desire to generate content, you want to generate meaningful content, but with recruiting and what 247 Sports does and how you've been able to latch on and make connections in that field locally, that in itself probably keeps you busy, I have to imagine, especially if you're doing it for football and all these other sports, baseball and basketball as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really turned into a true, obviously 24/7 Sports is the name of the company, but it is 24/7, 365. Like, even when you go on vacation in the summer, you still are covering recruiting. You got to have your phone on because you never know what news is going to break in terms of what player's going to commit. And it's kind of like broken into segments now. Like, I would say recruiting as a whole used to be more year round from the high school and JUCO perspective, but now it's almost like the summer, specifically June and July, is full-on high school recruiting. Like, everybody's trying to build their class then. You're having camps, you're having official visits, and the majority of the high school class is built this time of year, or specifically in June, and then leaking into July when it goes dead. And then you've got now the transfer portal period, which kind of takes over the offseason from the winter, obviously December, and you got coaching moves going on, but the portal basically dominates December and January. And then you've got spring practice, and then it turns into high school recruiting over the summer. Then all those guys sign in December when everybody's focused on the portal. So it's almost like broken up into segments now, and we just made it through the summer segment. We'll see how many of these commits stick and sign in December. Mostly, a lot of them do. Typically, you might see 1 to 3 end up decommitting and flipping, and then ECU will flip some other guys as a result of that. But we're now through that phase, and obviously on to the season, really.
Hope springs eternal this time of year. I think there is reason for hope with East Carolina. There seems to be, through the portal, some upgrades at several positions, and they've added on some areas to add to some position groups. The offensive line is going to play in a big way, too, to a degree. But you look at the schedule, particularly in conference, and you look at the fact that you have two, I won't say proven, but certainly two on paper and historically capable quarterbacks. And we like the way they looked in the spring. So to me, there is a sense of true optimism And you don't always get that if you come off a season like last year that was by everybody's account, pretty disastrous.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unlike anything I've ever covered, Patrick, and maybe you too. Just like typically when you have a season that bad, obviously unless it's like year one of a coach, like Scotty Montgomery, year one to year two, there's a little optimism going into year two because it's like, all right, that was his first year. He's going to make improvements. I was much younger during the John Thompson. No, he didn't improve. I was much younger during the John Thompson days, and I'm sure it was the same going to year two.
Yeah.
But this feels different because it's very rare that you have a coach in year 5 take this big of a step back, but then also there be this much optimism. I think a lot of it has to do with Coach Houston's background. He's definitely more of a winner, and he always has been really until recently at East Carolina. Definitely has never had a bad season like this past season. So you have that factor, and then you've got the factor with the portal now where it's like you can just – more so than rebuild and reload, just come up with almost an entirely new team, or in this case, a new offense in many ways. So, and it's not like they were terrible as a team last year. They were just horrific on offense. So if you could fix the offense, and it's not as easy as it sounds, but this is basically the deal. If you fix the offense and keep the defense the same, you're going to at minimum be a bowl team. And then what if the offense is really good, and what if the defense gets better? All of a sudden you're a conference title contender. So, it's just really interesting, Patrick, that you wouldn't think there would be this much optimism, but there is a reason for optimism for the reasons we've mentioned.
With John David Baker replacing Donnie Kirkpatrick, Stephen, there's a reason for the optimism too, because when you talk to him, he's really sharp. He's on top of it, and they're going to play fast. Is the personnel there to play totally like he wants, or are there going to be some real growing pains, you think?
I think there's going to be growing pains, regardless. Anytime you have an OC change, and I just think it's inevitable. And I hope people are patient because you are going from a pretty drastic style, pretty drastic stylistic change. I mean, ECU tempo-wise played at one of the slower paces, not at like the very bottom of college football, but probably the bottom third under Coach Kirkpatrick more times than not. And now you're going to be ramping it up. You're still in a very heavily based RPO offense, but I'll say it is different. There's more ways, I think, to attack the defense given kind of the multiplicity of the offense and just the amount of vertical passing game along with the RPO concepts built in underneath. Like there's a lot that has to be kind of in sync because there are so many option routes for the receivers. The quarterbacks have to read a lot that's going on. And, the thing I worry about with this offense, and I think it does give ECU a lot more upside with the tempo and also with just all the different intricacies within it, is you got to have guys on the same page. And how do you do that when you have a quarterback competition going on? That's why I think it's imperative that earlier rather than later, and I think the absolute latest, and this is probably what will happen, is they'll name a quarterback after the second scrimmage because it just makes sense. That way you get 2 weeks going through the season opener and 2 weeks to practice to really decide it. But that they got to have as much time as possible with that first string unit to get on the same page because it's all about timing, rhythm, reading the defense. And but there will be growing pains. I am glad they start with Norfolk State because you can afford some growing pains in that game. But then it starts right away. ODU's a tricky second game. And then they run App, Liberty, UTSA. That's as tough as any on the schedule.
Then follow that with UTSA at home, and that's a pretty daunting 3 weeks, really daunting 4 weeks on the Pirates schedule. We're talking to Stephen Igo, Hoist the Colors, hoistthecolors.net, 247 Sports. Hoist the Colors comes back in August, on August 12th, and Igo will return at noon on that Monday. You have a couple at quarterback coming in. And I think that was as bad as the offense was last year. The quarterback play magnified a lot of the deficiencies in the whole offense. So you have Caden Hauser, you have Jake Garcia. How much of a two-horse race really is this?
I mean, it's definitely, I think it's wide open between those two, and I think it's only those two. I mean, no disrespect to Raheem Jeter and also Bryson Harrison. They added as a depth move from Georgia State, a transfer to get another scholarship quarterback in there because Cole Hodge is injured. He won't be able to enroll this fall. But I mean, it's truly a battle between Hauser and Garcia. And, just usually like when coaches say, it's a toss up, it's 50-50. Like I watched a lot of practice in the spring, and I feel like it was truly 50-50. But I think it's a different 50-50 than like when you have a quarterback battle and you don't feel good about either guy. I think in this case, you feel good about both. I wouldn't say at this point you feel great, because you would feel great if one was separating from the other and truly being the guy. But like, I think it's just they both have such ability that no matter who it is, you're going to be a lot better than last year. And now it just comes down to consistency. I see Hauser as more of a guy who can improvise a little bit, get deeper into the play. And I see Garcia more as a guy who can just throw the snot out of it. Not that Hauser doesn't have a bad arm at all. He's got a great arm. But I think Garcia, when he's comfortable and he's in rhythm, man, he can rip it and he looks amazing. But then when things get off track a little bit, maybe he looks a little bit shaken, and that's kind of the next step for him. If Garcia can be more consistent from play to play, I think he can give Hauser absolutely the run for the starting job, and that's why it's so close, because he's got real ability. But I just have a gut feeling Hauser and really no insight, just gut feeling that he ends up edging Garcia for the job, and then it's just a matter of how he plays in games. But we'll see the next few weeks.
You don't see a scenario where they're going to play both guys, particularly in week 1, do you?
I think everything I've heard is they want to avoid that as much as possible, just because, how it went last year. I think John David Baker doesn't want to do that. I think Mike Houston doesn't want to do that. Now, what happens if in both scrimmages, which are, those are going to be the real tests. They're going to put them in live situations for sure. But if they go through both scrimmages and they don't really feel convicted in naming either one, I think that's when you start to get a little bit of a concern of why can neither guy separate? Is it because neither guy is good enough to be potentially great? Are they both just, good quarterbacks versus, really guys who can elevate the program? I don't know if it'll come to that, but I just see them avoiding that scenario in most cases. And then it becomes a matter of how much of a leash does QB1 get going into the first few games, because you don't want that guy looking over his shoulder either. So you would hope that they would make it easy on them and separate. But if they don't, they're going to have to make a tough decision and roll with that.
We're talking Pirate football with Stephen Igo. Guys reporting today. Camp opens, I guess, today and tonight with guys moving in and meetings and all that. But the practices start tomorrow. And Stephen will have coverage on Hoist the Colors. We'll have coverage here on 94.3 The Game and our social media as well. Igo, when you look at Rajay Harris, how does he fit the scheme? Mike Houston has said it's the healthiest he's been since his freshman year, which is, in my mind, a tremendous something that is a harbinger of possibly really good things to come.
I think Rajay, he's always been the most complete back in this program outside of, I would say even over Keaton Mitchell from the standpoint of just running, catching, blocking. Like Keaton was just a dynamic guy with the ball in his hands. Really didn't do a ton of receiving despite his build and his speed. But Rajay's always had the all-around ability. I think that makes him an ideal fit for any offense. My question with this is we just haven't seen it yet. At least in spring he was limited. In the summer he's been able to do more, but we haven't seen it, as far as, fans and us as media. And you look more at this offense, it is more of a one cut and go, type running style more times than not.
Right.
And yeah, you want Rajay to be able to, shake and bake, do some of that stuff. But when he's at his best, he's making that cut, getting downhill like we saw versus Tulsa last year. Little less dancing at the line of scrimmage, and he has great feet. He can make people miss, but I almost want to see a little less dancing and him just cut and go. And so that's something I'm looking forward to seeing as preseason camp really gets going. Is he going to be hesitating hitting the hole, or is he just going to cut and go, hit it hard? And once he gets going downhill, he is tough to bring down. He's broken a ton of tackles. You look at the stats, the numbers from Pro Football Focus. His ability to make guys miss, get extra yardage after contact, or near the top of college football is just how quickly can he get downhill and start that process? I think that's the key. But that's one of the big storylines for me is Rajay Harris is the guy we saw versus Tulsa last year. Is that the guy we see more of this season in this offense? I hope so, but I really just want to see it to believe it.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get more from Stephen Igo, who joins us here today. Pirate football is starting with camp getting up today in the preseason, and the Pirates getting ready for that opening week against Norfolk State on August 31st, about a month away. We're coming back with more of the Patrick Johnson Show. Stay with us.
We are
Riding shotgun with you on the drive home.
It's showtime.
This is the Patrick Johnson Show on 94.3 The Game.
All right, Stephen Igo is with us here today on the Patrick Johnson Show. If you missed any of Igo's opening comments, we're lucky to still be on the air. I couldn't believe the things he was saying. No, if you missed it, you can always go back and relive the magic. Or if you hear it again, you can always go back and do that, or catch it for the first time by going to the IBX Media app, which is free for download, Google Play and App Store. It's the Patrick Johnson Show. Hoist the Colors, Stephen Igo. Hoist the Colors Radio returns to 94.3 The Game at noontime on Monday, August 12th. Looking forward to having Stephen back on the air. All right, Igo, let's talk a little bit about the offensive line, because I should say a lot of guys are back. There's a good amount of guys back. Dustin Hall comes to mind as an all-conference guy. He had a pretty impressive year. There were some guys that were banged up that are back. I didn't think they were great last year. I wonder how much of that was the guy behind him, at quarterback. But, there were some real growing pains on the offensive line. I had a different offensive line coach. Now they're having their third one in 3 years. A few of these guys are. So, do you feel like that group has made strides? And does the offense, again, if they're on the same page, does the offense lend itself to your offensive line maybe covering up a few of its deficiencies?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally that they can't be like, you look at the numbers, the grades from Pro Football Focus and just the eye test. I don't think they can be any worse than last year. I just think, the whole offense last year, they had no identity. I mean, they were like changing the run schemes and the blocking schemes almost from week to week at times. They were trying new things. I don't think the offensive line under Alan Mogridge and the offensive coordinator, Donnie Kirkpatrick, meshed really well all year. It was their first time working together. It just didn't seem to fit. And I think the players, I mean, so much of this game and so much of sports is about confidence. And if you don't believe in what you're doing, it's going to create problems. And obviously that was an issue all year. Like, you could just see the O-line at times throughout the season just hang their head after bad plays, and that's not what you want. And I think just the mentality shift alone is going to make this group a lot better. Now, are they elite up front? I don't think so at all, but I think the thing you do have with this group is you have experience and you have versatility. Dustin Hall, he played a lot of guard last year. I think he's personally a better fit for center. They've moved him inside to center. I think that's a great move. Hampton Ergel can play guard or tackle. Really, I think they're kind of weak depth-wise at tackle right now. I can see him starting as a guard and then playing some tackle in time. Parker Moore went from the right side of the line his whole career to playing the left side for the first time. I don't think he was super confident last year. It showed. He did come on strong towards the end of last year. I think he'll be better this year. So you've got guys that have played a lot of football. They brought in some transfers who have been solid this offseason. So I think just attacking offensively and going with tempo and having the chance to have the defense on their heels versus going slow and having the defense attack you, I think that makes such a difference too. They were never great offensive line wise in the Lincoln Riley era. Many of the same caliber athletes they have now.
Yeah.
But you can mask it to an extent, and I think this scheme will do a better job of, along with the tempo.
So he's going by Siobhan Revel now. Is that it? Siobhan?
I think it's Savon. Silent
Savon.
H, Patrick.
Savon. Forgive me.
Or Savon, I believe. Yeah.
Savon. Is this a Savon? I'm saying that as if I'm French. Savon, because I've been watching the Olympics, I guess. Savon Revel.
There you go.
Nagurski watch list today, apparently. And how poised for a huge year is he? And how healthy is he?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question I have is going into camp. One of the first things I'll be watching is, how he's moving. Because, he had groin surgery this offseason. It was something he kind of debated because it was something he managed all of last year, really played through. And if you go back and rewatch the games when he would, really fully extend and make a play, he could, be a little banged up after the play. But he got that fixed in the spring. He's rehabbed. They've been super careful with him. but it is kind of a tricky thing to rehab from. I think, he is a workout warrior. He puts in as much work as anybody. I think he'll be fine. He's just got to be careful with it. But I will be looking forward to seeing how healthy he is. If he's 100%, I think he's the best cornerback in the conference. I mean, he's 6'3". He can run. He can jump. He is a freak athlete. I really think he's got first-round NFL draft upside. Now, how does he get there? To me, he's got to go out and make more plays this year. He had a ton of pass breakups. He also dropped probably about 4 or 5 picks. He did get his first career pick in the Tulsa game, but there are not too many guys his size with his length that can run like he can, that can jump like he can, that have those explosive traits. So if he starts making plays like pick sixes this year, game-changing interceptions, those are how you start winning awards, start moving into first-round territory. But he's got all the skill. He's really a guy you can leave in man coverage against pretty much anybody on the schedule and feel good about it. And that allows Blake Carroll to basically do kind of whatever he wants to with the rest of his defense.
So Revel, we're hoping he's healthy. He had the surgery, as you mentioned. Another one was the wrist with Rajay. Any other guys that maybe missed the spring or spring ball that have convalesced and should be ready to go this week?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the big thing rolling out the practice for the first time is like what guy is going to be randomly sitting out that maybe you didn't expect, or are they all practicing? And what guys that missed the spring, are they back, or are they going to be, still banged up? So Jacob Saker is a big one, starting guard as a redshirt freshman all of last season. He missed the spring. What's his status? I really don't know. Going into the fall camp, I would assume he's back, and we'll be fine. We'll find out for sure on Wednesday. And Kerry King is one that kind of a forgotten man.
Yeah.
Last year was going to start at receiver, and then blew out his knee a week or two before the season, missed the year, was limited in the spring. Now he's back. How does he fit in this offense? I mean, he looked a guy who could have a breakout season last year. So how is he moving around? And then just guys who tend to miss some time with hamstrings here or there, like Javius Bond is a guy who seemingly is kind of always banged up. Can he have a healthy preseason camp? Because we all know he's got ability. And then you got other guys in that boat too. But those are some of the big names I'll be keeping an eye on for sure.
Defensively, I think they really like what they have. There's some questions, particularly in the secondary, who might be some guys that emerge. I mean, there's no shortage of opportunity and guys to maybe fill roles. But when you look at defensively, as much uncertainty as there is with the offense, you kind of have an idea. Defensively, I think there's a lot of guys that could fill the role singularly or in tandem potentially in different spots on the field.
Yeah, it's interesting because so many of these guys, particularly at safety or at corner, have played a decent amount, but they've never been really full-time guys. And that's one great thing about Blake Carroll's philosophy is they just play so many players. I mean, they rotate so many guys. It's almost like typically when they have a key player like a Julius Wood leave, or even an Antoine Jackson transfer or a Taylor Jackson transfer, like the guy behind them has played. And then they'll maybe bring in a transfer to help that competition as well. So you kind of have that at all three of those spots. Like, Taylor Jackson transferred. Zakai Barker played a lot last year. Looks like a guy who's emerging as a leader at linebacker. And then they brought in Damian Wilson from Missouri as a transfer to kind of compete with him. So I like where that position sits at corner. They lost Antoine Jackson to UCF, but Isaiah Brown-Murray, IBM, played a lot last year. They also brought in Aiden Duncanson and Andrew Wilson-Lamp, 2 corner transfers to compete there. And then at safety, you got 4 or 5 guys who have been part-time starters: Omar Rogers, Devin King, Jordan Huff, and also Dontavius Nash. And now it's just who among those guys, that group, all those guys, who among that group is going to be consistent, who's going to emerge as a team leader? I have little doubt that 1 or 2 of them will. It's just a matter of who's going to be kind of the mouthpiece of the defense going forward.
You're right. I think you're going to see a lot of guys, particularly in that first game, get some action and get a live fire dress rehearsal in a sense and a chance to prove themselves. And Damon Magazu's back with the safeties. What do you feel like he brings other than, the guy who's been in the program and kind of understands the fabric of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it never hurts to have some different perspective. I mean, Trip Weaver has basically almost always been with Blake Carroll outside of a few years here or there. So, you have a ton of familiarity there. That's great. certainly you wish Tripp the best at Austin Peay as defensive coordinator for the first time, calling it, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. But I think Damon Magazoo, he just almost commands so much respect from his players and recruits without even trying, just because of who he is and kind of how he carries himself. His dad was a longtime ball coach before passing away, obviously, and I don't know if Damon ever really wanted to coach, but maybe it was almost destiny for him to coach as a coach's kid. So that's what Ruff used to call him, CK, coach's kid. So he's just a fit for it, man. And certainly there will be some growing pains like him learning the defense. He said in the spring he had to ask some of the players, how have you guys done it in certain ways? But I think having a different perspective, UNLV under his watch in the back end, they intercepted a lot of passes. And really ECU last year did not intercept a ton of passes. So maybe he brings a little bit more confidence, ball hawk mentality. I think he had 11 picks in his ECU career, which is no small feat, a ton of great picks. So just the importance of taking the ball away, catching it when you have the chance to catch it. I think his mentality will really help the safety room.
What are the special teams looking like?
So basically, you have kind of your core group back. You have Alex Harper as your snapper back. You have Luke Larson as the punter and Andrew Conrad as the kicker. Now, they do have some competition coming in, but those will likely be the starters. The big difference is Andre Powell is the new special teams coach, and he is basically the dedicated special teams coordinator. He has no other position responsibilities. He really has no other recruiting responsibilities other than special teams. So he is 100% special teams all the time. And it's one of those things where this is the first time at ECU somebody has had that role. And how much does that allow him to scheme, do different things? Special teams at ECU under Mike Houston, I would say, have been solid, especially in the kick coverage side of things. They have not given up a lot of big kick returns. Field goal cooking, we know the deal there. But we just haven't seen the group make, I would say, a lot of game-changing plays, like kick returns for touchdowns. I know they've had a few, but really impact the game, or a key block punt that changes an entire game. Just some of those more impact plays, what he was really known for at James Madison. So I think that's really the goal of this offseason. How do you get more of those impact plays under a new special teams coordinator, and obviously avoid giving them up continued?
Stephen, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk with Mike Houston or not. How was the most recent time you spoke with him? But based on that conversation, how is his, I don't want to say, I guess mentality going in? I mean, obviously he would tell us many times this will not be happening again. You get the sense that, there's a lot of internal pressure. Sure, there's probably a lot of external pressure. Based on your interaction with him, if it's recent especially, what's the vibe you're picking up from Coach Houston?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think anytime, we haven't spoken in depth in recent days. We obviously stay in touch kind of throughout the offseason. I haven't interviewed him since really post-spring, but just, from exchanging messages with him and also just watching the American Media Day, I think there's obviously always a sense of urgency this time of year. But I think there's been so much detail and attention that has gone into this overhaul offensively, especially from day one, and changing some things defensively too. I don't want that to get lost in the shuffle. It's not they're going to be doing the same exact thing as last year and just hoping it returns to form. They've just, I think, been so consumed with making sure that they are not leaving any stone unturned, that they're confident in what they've done. And I think anytime you make a coordinator change, given Coach Houston's background, there's uncertainty with it, but everything I've heard externally, internally, is they could not be more thrilled with how it's gone, with what John David Baker has brought to the program, the way he's related to players, the confidence he's brought. The defense has always played with swagger under Blake Harrell. You can see it in practice. You can feel it. The offense, it's never quite been to that level. They've been good under Coach Kirkpatrick, but they never had that confidence, that swagger. I feel like that's changed this offseason. Now, they got to go do it in the game. They got to do it against somebody else, but there is belief, whereas last year I feel like it was more hope. And I think this year, especially offensively, there's hey, we really have a chance to be good. Now we just got to go do it. Whereas last year it was well, let's cross our fingers and hope that this works out. We think we can be good, but we just don't really know. Whereas this year I think they truly believe.
How do you see the American panning out?
So I picked UTSA in our preseason poll to win the league. They had 4 first place votes. The reason I went with UTSA, I still can't believe somebody picked Army, by the way. But the reason I went with UTSA is they have the most favorable schedule. They do play at ECU. They've got a tricky road game at Rice, but I think they get one of the big 4 at home. I think Tulane, or I think it's Memphis at home. They get one of those teams at home. Yeah, and then they avoid Tulane and USF. So they're really good at home under Jeff Traylor. I know they've got a new quarterback. Frank Harris has finally graduated after 15 years of playing quarterback for the Roadrunners. But
Social Security, he's collecting that now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I just feel like they have a path to the title game, and then I think they can win it if they get there, especially if they get to play at home, and they're almost unbeatable. And they're in conference play under Traylor, they've been incredible. So I think it's good that DCU's getting them early. They historically struggle in September. But I had them winning the league. I have Memphis and South Florida right behind them. I'm not as high on Tulane personally, but I still think they can be very good with the coach they brought in. But I have those 4 at the top, and UTSA win. I have ECU. I think I picked them 6th or 7th. And that's kind of how I see it, is those 4 at the top. ECU obviously very favorable as well. If the Pirates beat UTSA in that first game, they'll have as good odds as really anybody almost to make that championship game, because at that point they don't really play anybody that's picked to finish ahead of them for the most part the rest of the way.
What's the ceiling for ECU this year? I mean, what if you max out? What is the max out, I guess, in your mind?
I think realistically 10-2. I mean, I just think you could say the ceiling is like college football playoff. I don't know. Is it possible? Yes. I mean, if everything goes perfect, yeah. I mean, with the schedule, you could go 12-0. But they're going to be dogs at Liberty for sure. They're going to be dogs probably against UTSA as it stands today. ODU is probably a toss-up game in Vegas. App State, probably a slight favorite. So, how do you come out of that stretch? If let's say ECU comes out of that stretch, if they're 4-1 after playing UTSA, then you'd be in elite shape for the rest of the way. If you're 3-2, I think you still feel pretty good. And if you're 2-3, you're not feeling as good. So that 5-game start, obviously you hope you beat Norfolk State. That 3-game stretch really from App through UTSA is going to be crucial, because I think it determines what your ceiling is based on how those games go. But you could go 10-2 if you get through that stretch at 4-1 and you've got winnable games left and you can play for a conference title. It's not out of the realm of possibility for sure.
You mentioned Army. The Army-Navy game will be non-conference, but it'll have a couple of teams now from the American. How do you see the Army addition? I mean, obviously there's a fan base. There's a Northeastern fan base, a national fan base, but there is a lot of interest in New York City with Army football, especially when they're playing well. So how do you see that as a net positive for the American Athletic Conference?
I think it's a great move. I mean, I think it makes a ton of sense. You're the American Conference. You now have Army, Navy. I mean, it just makes sense. I know the game is not a conference game, but you still have both institutions in your program. And I don't know what the television rights are, but eventually at some point those rights will have to be, renegotiated, renewed, and it's not out of the realm of possibility years from now that the American could try to make it a conference game. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But it's just the most logical add. I mean, you could look at other schools and say, well, they're better, have more football upside or have, better athletes or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's Army. You get to add West Point to your to obviously your road trips if you're an ECU fan, which is great, or a fan of any school in the conference. I just think it makes a ton of sense. You got a national brand, and they're always going to have a fan base. They're always going to draw eyeballs, and it gives you a chance to really expand the league. So I was a fan of it from day one. I thought it made the most sense, and certainly other maybe sexier football names out there, maybe. But I think Army is a safe and a great ad for the American.
Last thing, what's the big storyline of the season? Obviously, the 12-team playoff and the new conferences out there. even the American with Army coming in, it's going to have a new dynamic. So is that the predominant storyline early on in all season in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just from an ECU angle and really the American is can the American continue to establish itself as the team that is going to get that, auto bid from the group of 5 conferences into the playoff? Because I feel like the Sun Belt and even the Mountain West are in decent shape too if they have a team run the table, or I guess Liberty from Conference USA, despite having the once again the weakest schedule in college football.
Right.
Does a 10-2 American team that wins a conference championship, do they get in over an 11-1 or a 12-0 Liberty team? I don't know. Last year, SMU didn't have a great season, but had an argument to get in over Liberty just because they played a tougher schedule. But Liberty got the call. So how does that dynamic look? For example, if ECU goes 11-1 and somehow, or 10-2 and wins the conference championship, would they get in over a team that we just spoke about? I don't know. So there's a lot of questions there. And then from the college football playoff standpoint, it's like, yeah, it's cool to have an expanded playoff, but does it really make a difference? Is it still going to be Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Oregon, the same teams we see over and over more times than not? I think in the end it probably will be. It'll just make for a little bit more excitement for the first few weekends of the playoff.
Hoist the Colors returns to radio on 94.3 The Game on Monday, August 12th. Mark your calendars now. It'll be a high noon start. Stephen, great to talk to you. I hope we can get you on again very, very soon. But thank you for the time today. Great stuff.
Absolutely, Patrick. Appreciate it. Can't wait for the show to be back. Thanks.
There he is, Stephen Igo, and we'll have more of the Patrick Johnson Show right after this.
The stunning conclusion of the show. It's the P-Man here on 94.3 The Game.
I'm excited about, we told you about tomorrow's show with Mole, and we'll find out about the Softball Little League World Series coming to Greenville and the opening ceremonies this weekend. The other thing, Chris Lee is with WRAL Sports now. He's kind of their main sports anchor, and he and a colleague of his and a filmmaker, a guy named Cliff Bumgarner, have done a film on pro wrestling at Dorton Arena. Historically, pro wrestling at Dorton Arena, which we're talking the old Mid-Atlantic wrestling days. So if you're a fan of that kind of, they're going to have a movie about it, a documentary about that next week that'll air on PBS North Carolina. We'll give you all the details of that, plus a way you can even get an advanced screening if you're willing to go to Raleigh and that kind of thing. So we're looking forward to that. I think that'll be a lot of fun on Thursday. I'm kind of juiced about that. Pro wrestling. Those were the days of pro wrestling. That's when it was wrestling. Understand that Connor Norby to the Marlins. Not surprising. I don't think. Do you, Pilk?
No, they needed to deal him. He needed somewhere he can get some more playing time and build on his major league resume, and this is an opportunity for him. The Marlins are struggling. They're young. They've got some exciting players, but he's going to have a lot more opportunities, I think, there than he was ever going to have in Baltimore with some of the young talent that they have. So stinks he won't win a World Series ring this year like he could have in Baltimore, but hey, it should be an everyday starter there. So looking forward to it. Very excited.
Well, and I think this most recent call-up for Norbs was a little bit of that, the current look at the big league level. Does that make sense? I think part of that, not entirely, but I mean, part of that was, all right, let's give this guy some ABs at the big league level so he's a more attractive trade piece. And Norby to the Marlins, as you say, an opportunity there to get regular playing time, one would think. Not too bad with the money as far as the taxes. That no income tax in Florida, Pilk.
No income tax.
I think he's going to like
you're
that.
You're living in Miami and South Beach as opposed to living in into Maryland. Ugh.
Yes, where there are taxes and lots of them.
And if you park in the wrong place, you come back and your car's on cinder blocks. So there's that too.
Wow. Send your cards and letters to Philip at ibxmedia.com.
Hey, dude, me and Dom took a wrong turn one time last time we were in Baltimore. That's all I got to say.
Ooh.
We're still here.
Wow. Yeah, that whole area, it's not what it once was. So Connor Norby to the Marlins, the Fighting Fish. So there you go. People will be rooting for, will become Miami Marlins fans now. I guess he'll be in Atlanta a little more frequently, right? In D.C.
Yeah, twice a year in both those places. Yeah.
A little more frequency. He'll be there. Of course, he was in Baltimore. That's all those games he would play up there. But it's not like he's been traded to the West Coast per se. So you get to see him. Great to have Igo on today. Really was. Igo show returns on the 12th of August. Hoist the Colors. And it'll be on at noon. And looking forward to having Stephen back with a brand new show. So that is what is coming up. Pirate football gets underway tomorrow with social media, and we'll have comments from Coach Houston tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Also, excited to tell you a little bit about what's going on with the brand new, or with the Little League World Series for softball this year. It's the 50th anniversary of that. It's being held here in Greenville, of course. They just signed the extension on that recently, and they will have their opening ceremonies that'll be taking place over the weekend, and looking forward to that. All right, last show of the week for tomorrow. Catch you, next to last week, show of the week tomorrow. What day is it? Who knows? Mull tomorrow, Andrew Schmidt, Convention Visitors Bureau, encore presentation from the TOT, comments from Mike Houston. That's tomorrow. And then Chris Lee and Cliff Bumgarner are scheduled to join us now on Thursday for their Dorton Arena Pro Wrestling documentary coming to PBS NC. Thanks to Stephen Igo for being on with us today. Thanks to Philip the Ref Pilkington. Catch you tomorrow in the morning on Talk of the Town, and then back here at 5 for the Patrick Johnson Show. Have a great evening, everybody.